Welcome back to Let's Talk. Glad to have you here. Hope you would enjoy this episode. And if you do enjoy these episodes, let us know. Give us a like, thumbs up, please share it, and share some comments with us as well so we could know if we are sharing value, if you enjoy what we're saying, enjoying what we're bringing. And if you have ideas on how we could improve, let us know. We'd always love to improve. Or if you have ideas on another topic that you would like for us to look into, let us know that as well. Last time we started on a new series entitled Living with Pain. Today we're going to continue, and my focus, living with the pain of finances, financial pain. And we started by looking at the widow in 2 Kings chapter 4, where her husband was dead. They owed more than they could have paid. The creditor came, and his job or his plan was to take her two sons as bond slaves so it could work the debt off. She was going through a rough time and she cried out to Elisha. So we started looking at what to do when you're about to lose it all. And the first step is to seek for an answer, to search for a turnaround. And in her seeking for an answer, she cried out to Elisha. And verse 1 of the passage, 2 Kings 4 reads, "Now there cried a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets unto Elisha, saying, Thy servant my husband is dead, and thou knowest that thy servant did fear the Lord, and the creditor is come to take unto him my two sons to be bondmen." Last time I mentioned that many of us are not good at asking for help, but if we really believe that we're about to lose it all, we need to seek for an answer. We need to search for a turnaround. And today we're going to look at the second portion, or the second part. When we believe we're about to lose it all, we need to submit to a teacher. We need to expect more from ourselves. We need to talk about solutions we have. Notice that the prophet asked her what he should do for her and what she had in the house. In verse 1, she cried unto the prophet, and in verse number 2, he answers her. And Elisha said unto her, What shall I do for thee? Tell me, what hast thou in the house? And she said, Thine handmaid had not anything in the house save a pot of oil. So here he turned the focus around. She came to him expressing her issue, expressing her problems, telling him all her woes. And he asked her, What shall I do for thee? Tell me, what do you have in the house? We need to expect more from ourselves. She probably came to him without any expectations of she being able to help herself. But he forced her to take a look at herself and answer the question what she had in the house. In submitting to a teacher, we need to express ourselves, and you are required, I am required to express ourselves. She answered the prophet. So she didn't just listen, she didn't just take in his question and ponder it, she actually answered by expressing herself. And she mentioned that all she had was a pot of oil. Thirdly, we need to examine ourselves. And I ask of you that you examine yourself. You need to recognize the value and the resources that you have. The answer may be in our presence and possession, but not in our perception. Let's take a look at Genesis chapter 22, verses 14, 15, and 16. Let me just give a little backstory about this. Abraham and his wife received a promise from God that he would give them a son. Time had passed. Of course, they were getting older. It appeared as if they wouldn't have that son naturally between the two of them. So Abraham's wife, Sarah, had a wonderful idea. She said, you know what? Abraham, why don't you just marry my handmaid, Hagar? You two have a son. You take that son and treat him like it's ours, and that'll be the son that God provided. And Abraham was happy to oblige. He didn't have a problem with it, so he did what she said and had a son. Now later on, God made it clear, hey, that's not my plan. You and Sarah will have a son. So God gave them a son as well. That second son, or Abraham's son with Sarah, his name is Isaac. And Abraham's first son, his name is Ishmael. And one day Sarah caught Ishmael mocking. And she was upset, and she demanded that Abraham send Ishmael away, as well as Hagar, his mother. So we're here at verse 14, Genesis 21, and now the story continues. It says, And Abraham rose up early in the morning, and took bread and a bottle of water, and gave it unto Hagar, putting it on her shoulder and the child, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. And the water was spent in the bottle, meaning the water was used up. And she cast the child under one of the shrubs. And she went and sat her down over against him a good way off, as it were a bow shot. For she said, Let me not see the death of the child. And she sat over against him and lifted up her voice and wept. So here's what's going on here. Abraham sent them out, gave them water, gave them some bread. They wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. And bear in mind, in the wilderness, that is an extremely dangerous place for a woman to be without protection. In the wilderness, there are always wild beasts. The weather isn't favorable. It's usually hot, not much shade, not much water. It's just a dangerous place to be. And not soon after wandering, she saw her death coming, and she saw the death of her child coming. God was paying attention to everything that was going on. He sent an angel to speak to her, and he asked, What's ailing you? And she explained what the problem was. And the angel said, God heard the cry of the child, the voice of the child. So while Hagar was crying, the son was praying, and God heard him. You think Abraham had anything to do with the fact that this boy prayed to God? Of course. And in verse 19, we see something. And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the bottle with water and gave the lad to drink. She didn't move from where she was. God opened her eyes, and all of a sudden she saw a well of water. Do you believe God just put that well of water there? Of course not. The well of water was always there. But sometimes we are so consumed with what we believe is the worst thing that could ever happen to us, we don't see clearly. Of course she would have been crying, and the water welling up in her eyes may have made it too difficult for her to see the well of water near to her. So God opened her eyes, she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the bottle of water and gave the lad to drink. As I said earlier, we need to examine ourselves. You need to recognize the value and resources that you have. The answer may be in our presence and possession, but not in our perception. At times like this, when we are about to lose it all, we should pray, Lord, open my eyes. So let's go a little further now, and we're going to speak about how to save the family from financial ruin. Because her desire at that point was to save her family from financial ruin. The first step in saving the family from financial ruin, based on the advice given by the prophet, was to go borrow. One may wonder, what kind of advice is this? The woman is already in great debt and about to lose her sons, and the prophet tells her to go borrow? What kind of financial advice is this? It is sound advice. This advice, although it may sound strange to us, it was, and it will be sound advice, as it came from the man of God representing God. Please note, debt can be good or it can be bad. And here are some of the ways we could tell if debt is good or bad. Good debt is generally considered to be debt that is taken on to finance investments or assets that have the potential to increase in value or generate income. Let's look at some examples of good debt. These could include student loans, could include mortgages, they could include business loans. At times, these types of debt have a long-term benefit and can help individuals and businesses achieve financial goals. Bear in mind, it is also important to manage debt responsibly and to avoid taking on more than can be comfortably repaid. So in a nutshell, good debt helps you to produce investments where you could gain the fruits afterwards, and these fruits would be enough to pay off the debt as well as to have more left over for you. Good debt could also be debt used to gain assets, and an asset is something that produces an income for you. Bad debt, on the other hand, is generally considered to be debt that is taken for non-essential or depreciating assets that go down in value over time. It could be used for expenses that do not generate long-term benefits or income. Examples of bad debt include high-interest credit card debt, personal loans for vacations or luxury items, and payday loans. These types of debt often come with high interest rates and fees and can quickly spiral out of control, leading to financial hardship and even bankruptcy. It is important to avoid bad debt and only take on debt that can be comfortably repaid. 2 Kings 4:3, let's hear the advice of the prophet. Then he said, "Go, borrow the vessels abroad of all thy neighbors, even empty vessels, borrow not a few." So what the prophet told the widow to borrow was not a debt that was not exorbitant or out of control or way beyond her means. It allowed her to be in a position to benefit greatly from the blessings that were coming her way. Even if all failed, she could easily give back all the vessels to her neighbors. It was not out of the way. We're going to stop here, for our time is up. And for the next episode, we're going to look at the next step in how to save your family from financial ruin. The first step we looked at today was to go borrow. The second step is what we're going to jump right into for our next episode: go home. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you very much for listening. If you like what we shared here today, give it a thumbs up. Please share it with others as well. And thank you very much for being a part.